Welcome to Your Future Starts Now, the go-to podcast for extraordinary women who are ready to step into their next chapter with authentic confidence. I'm your host, Gia Lacqua, empowerment coach, motivational speaker, children's book author, and girl mom. Whether you're a corporate powerhouse or an entrepreneur, this show is designed for you. Your Future Starts Now is more than just a podcast. It's a movement towards rewriting the rules of success for high-achieving women. Are you ready to get unstuck and step into your next chapter? If so, you're exactly where you need to be. Your future starts now. Welcome to Your Future Starts Now. I'm your host, Gia Lacqua. Thanks for joining us. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to Simone Knego. Simone is an international speaker and award-winning author of the bestselling book, The Extraordinary, Unordinary You. She's a two-time TEDx speaker, and her work has been featured on ABC, NBC, and CBS, and in Entrepreneur Magazine and Yahoo News. Her literary contributions have been honored by the National Indie Excellence Award and the NYC Big Book Award. Simone has not only summited Mount Kilimanjaro, but she's also the heart of a bustling household with 6 children, 3 dogs, and 1 husband of 30 years. As the creator of The Real Method, Simone continues to inspire and impact teams, fostering growth and promoting self-discovery. Simone, so happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to chat with you today. So tell us, we've got lots to talk about. Tell us a little bit about your backstory and what led you to the work that you're doing today.
So I am someone that has struggled with self-doubt my whole life until about 9 years ago, where I did something crazy that kind of changed everything for me. But I started off as a CPA. I became a teacher. I ran a horse farm. I've done all kinds of things in my life. I'm a big believer it's okay to change your mind. And it wasn't until, about 9 years ago where I figured out where my passion was. And that was in helping other people, but more specifically by sharing my stories. And I don't think I realized the power of a story before that moment in time. And that really changed everything. It changed my relationship with my family. I've been married to my husband for 31 years now. We have 6 children. We adopted our youngest 3. And I really decided that I wanted to put what I learned in overcoming my self-doubt or holding it back, right? We all still have voices that like to pop up in our heads, but to put together a method that based on what I did so that I can help other women. And that's where the real method stems from.
That's incredible. And so I love how you talk about we all sort of struggle with self-doubt, and it doesn't ever, I guess, really go away, but it's just how do we manage it and learn to keep it in check, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that when you look at statistics, 85% of people in this world struggle with self-esteem. And that's huge, right? That's across the board, men and women. And definitely, I feel like with women, it's even more difficult. Like we feel like we have these societal expectations, and I don't think we should have these anymore. Like we should be exactly who we are. As long as we're being the good in the world. I'm not saying go out and, be a miserable person, but I'm saying that if we can positively impact other people, we should not have to, have this specific body, drive this specific car, and we should all be happy. We shouldn't have to worry about that all of the time. But so much of it is what we see on social media, and that affects a lot of things for people.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right. I think the societal expectations are still very strong, and they are ingrained at a very young age. And then we have our own self-imposed expectations that we put on ourselves, right? In terms of perfectionistic tendencies and trying to be everything to everyone, which can take a real toll on our mental and physical health. So I think it's a great point, and it's time to shift that narrative and not feel like we have to fit in a box and not feel like we have to do things to appease other people, right? It's one thing to do something for someone else because you want to versus feeling like you have to. And I think that's where questioning our shoulds can be really powerful. And so I love that shift to being authentic and being able to
allow yourself to be who you want to be, right? And who you are at your core. I think that's incredibly powerful. I love also what you said about being able to change your mind. I feel like so many women get stuck on this trajectory of when they start out of college, like you don't really know what you want to do with the rest of your life when you're 20 years old, right? But we're sort of asked to make that decision at a very young age. And then we get stuck in this trajectory where we feel like it's very scary to change course, to step out of what we've been doing and what we know, what feels safe and what feels comfortable. And then you also have that external, well, what will other people think? What will other people say?
Mm-hmm.
And it also feels like starting over. So I love that you were able to, have multiple careers and pivot when, you felt called to pivot. So I would love to just understand from your perspective how, and there's a lot of it that's wrapped up in our identity. So would you talk for a minute about, that process of sort of reinvention and what allowed you to pivot in those moments?
I really struggled for so long kind of figuring out who I was, right? And it was societal stuff. It's stuff that my parents had to say, right? And I had great parents. So, but just they grew up in a time where
Yeah.
you followed these rules. Like my mom was a physician and she never wore pants to work. She always wore a dress because that was the expectation. And I look back at that and think like, how is that even possible? And it wasn't that long ago. But I think we have to understand that we have one life, right? And we need to be happy in our lives, whatever happiness means to you.
Yeah.
One of the things I've realized is that there is a job, you can make a job out of anything. Like you can make money, especially these days when you look at influencers and people that make, oh my gosh, so much money off of something that you're like, how is that possible? But I really think that it opens up so many doors for people that they can do something different and still do well. Now, I'm not saying go quit your job tomorrow, but figure out what you're passionate about. And that's kind of how I started was I realized, oh, wait, make a difference because I've always been big on philanthropy and helping other people, but that I can make a difference just by using my words and changing the way I say things, not just on a stage, but just how I interact with people as well. And really thinking about that. Okay, this is something I'm really passionate about. Now, how can I turn that into a career? And I started speaking on a volunteer basis and then started speaking for a fee and then started doing podcasting and realized that everybody's voice matters. And not that I didn't know that before, but just the profound impact you can make by changing your mind and doing something different and not staying that same course that you thought you would have to do your entire life.
Yeah, so powerful. And that calling that you listen to, how I can really impact other people's lives in a very positive way and following that, because that can be very scary. And it also ties back to what you said when we started about the power of a story and using your words to really create an impact in the world. So I love that. So Simone, tell us a little bit about in the work that you do. You've created the REAL method. Talk to us a little bit about what that is.
So these are the steps that I took when I was really struggling with self-doubt and kind of the breakthrough on that. And we can talk about this later, but the breakthrough on that really came when I was asked to do something that was completely out of my wheelhouse, completely out of my comfort zone, which was climb a mountain. And I was really struggling at that point. And my husband has always been really supportive. He's like, you should do it. Like you need to really take this step, get out of your shell, see what you're capable of. I know what you're capable of, but I think that you're struggling to see that. And so that moment really changed for me. And what I realized is there are 4 parts for me. First one is respecting your reflection. I think that we are taught to respect our elders, respect our teachers, respect our parents, but I don't ever remember being taught that the most important person to respect is yourself. That if you don't have self-respect, then how is it possible to respect all these other people truly, because you don't really understand what it means? The second part is embracing our failures. And I think especially for women, a lot of times we feel like if we have a bump in the road, if we make a mistake, then we shouldn't try ever again. And that is so far from the truth. We really need to learn from that moment in time and be able to move forward, because that's where the growth comes, is when we challenge ourselves when things are really difficult. It's not when, unicorns and rainbows are happening that we're like, oh, wait, I've made so much growth. That's the status quo. It's really taking it to that next level and understanding that your failure, your mistake does not equal your worth, right? It's a moment in time and that's it. The next thing is asking yourself what you want. So respect, embrace, ask, love. And so ask is, how often do we actually ask ourselves what we want? And this goes back to figuring out that it's okay to change your mind and choose something different, do a different job, do something that you're passionate about, change the way you do things. But rarely do we ask ourselves what we want. And especially as women, we spend so much time caring for other people that a lot of times it's hard for us to take that step back and take care of ourselves. And the last part is loving the woman in the mirror. And I think that this is crucial, because I can tell you from my past that I did not love the woman in the mirror. I didn't love what I saw. Didn't matter what anybody else saw. It was what I saw. And I think we need to remind ourselves that our truth is not always the truth, right? So what we see, we've conditioned ourselves to think that you have to look a certain way, that you have to act a certain way. And by really changing that narrative and embracing all of the different parts of us, that's where I think it's like, I talk about growth, but also when you're comfortable with yourself, really everything changes. Your relationship with your husband, your relationship with your children, your partner, whatever. Everything changes because you're willing to take different risks and you're comfortable in your skin. And that took a long time for me to get there. So respect your reflection, embrace your failures, ask yourself what you want, love the women in the mirror.
Amazing. I love that. That is so incredibly powerful. And I love in particular, what do you want? I think you're right. I think we don't ask ourselves enough when it comes to our priorities, and what we actually want from our own lives. Super important. And so the other thing I think is important to ask ourselves is, what do we need? What do we need in that moment? What do we need in our lives that we're missing? And I think that's another important one to add. And what you said about, how we see ourselves versus how other people see us, I talk about this a lot in the work that I do as well, is there's this dissonance between our self-image and how other people see us. And how do we reconcile that? How do we reconcile that people see us in such a bright light, and then we see ourselves and it can be so dim, right? And it's like, how do we fix that?
I think a big part is that we've told ourselves this narrative for so long, or society has made these innuendos and we've taken them on as our personas. And I feel like that the important thing is that we understand that we can change that. And part of it is for me, what works really well is positive affirmations. And they have to be specific to you. There's blanket ones that I will teach people to start with, but then it really is about making it all about you, what your needs are, where you want to make a change, understanding what your strengths are, and going from there. And when you look at if we can believe all the negative stuff, if we can look in the mirror and say, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you're whatever the negative things that we say to ourselves, we can change the story. And by changing the story, we can start believing the positive stuff. And it is actually scientifically proven. There's a lot of research on it that these positive affirmations can change the way you see yourself. It leads to a lot of different things, but I feel like we need to start changing that narrative so that we can see how unique and incredible each and every one of us are.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So you conquered self-doubt, and you also conquered Mount Kilimanjaro. Both are incredible feats of strength. So we talked about the self-doubt piece. Tell us your story about Mount Kilimanjaro. How did that come about?
a friend of ours had actually climbed it the year before. So I climbed it in 2015, and a friend of ours said, hey, they're putting a team together for next year. And it was raising funds for the Livestrong Foundation. And they asked my husband, and my husband basically said, 1, 2, 3, no, thank you. Why don't you call Simone? And they did. And he was like, I am not sleeping in a tent. I am not making myself suffer. That's just not what I want to do. Now I kind of feel like he regrets it because he sees the incredible growth I've had from that moment in time.
Sure.
But I made a commitment, and it was a commitment to myself. And I think that's a big part of confidence, is that when we make a commitment to ourselves, that we follow through on it. Because it's one thing if I didn't make it to the top, that's okay. But if I just quit before I even started because I didn't think I would be able to do it, that's a whole different story. But I said yes, and there were 16 of us. I didn't know anybody who was going, and I got partnered with a woman who is a breast cancer survivor. And some of the people on the team were climbing to support other people that were going through treatment. Other people were there because they were survivors. And it was completely life-changing. So not only was I climbing with strangers, I mean, when you talk about leadership in a boardroom is one thing. Leadership on a mountain, that's a whole different thing. And you're working with strangers, right? Like you're trying to figure out how you can accomplish the goal of summiting together. I mean, that was the big thing. Do we stay together? Do we break apart? What do we do? And it was so interesting to see how we came together as a group, and we still reach out to each other, and which is really nice. And actually my tent mate, she actually doesn't live far from me now. So I see her at least once a year, which is awesome. But the idea of doing something out of your wheelhouse, I like to say to people, what's your Kilimanjaro? Like, let's figure out the thing that would help you change your mind, help you change your story in a way that you feel really powerful. What's something you've always wanted to do, or something that you've never wanted to do, but you know it will be life-changing? And that's what this was for me. I cannot tell you how many people said to me, do you really think you're going to make it to the top? No, I think I'm going to make it halfway. That's why I'm doing it. And which is right. I mean, this is ridiculous. But what I've realized from that is that we can't let other people's own perception of themselves, or what they're not capable of doing, or what they think they're not capable of doing, guide what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot. And you see a lot of women will, they'll say some kind of negative comment, but you actually realize that it has nothing to do with you. It's how they feel about themselves, and then of course my thought process goes to helping that person. But it was life-changing. I got to the summit, and I really thought all of the moments in time where I doubted myself, that I'm not going to think that way anymore. I'm really going to think that when I set a goal and put in the work, that I can accomplish what I want to do. But I have to ask the question, what do I want to do first?
That's the starting point. And then, what you said earlier about making that commitment to yourself. If that's truly what you want, how do you commit to yourself to make that dream a reality, make that goal happen? And so I think that's really important, and great, incredible story. And I could see why it must have been such a transformative moment for you in your life. And I love how you talked about the leadership lessons that came out of it too, right? It's not just the physical. I'm sure there's a lot of mental, emotional, psychological strength that went along with it. So that's really incredible.
Just funny things like even having to go to the bathroom, right? I mean, there's no bathrooms. You have to figure out how to make that work, right? And middle of the night when it's freezing outside, all these things that you don't necessarily really focus on before you get there. Every detail matters, right? And every detail in our lives matter. It's not just pretending this thing isn't happening. You have to take ownership and follow through.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, Simone, I know that you have 6 children. I have 2, and I struggle at times. And so, as a working mother, I, would love if you could share with us, maybe some tips, tools, advice, any mom hacks that you have in terms of managing your household.
It's giving myself grace, knowing that I'm not going to finish everything every day like I need to, really prioritizing. I joke that, but it's not a joke, it's serious. I still make a paper list of all the things I have to do.
Yeah.
And I make it on a pink piece of paper because nobody else uses pink paper in my house. So I know that I'll always be able to find it. And people laugh when I say that, but I'm like, let me tell you how many times I've lost my list and then have to recreate
Sure.
it. So, or
Sure.
someone just thinks it's like a scratch paper, so they throw it away. But
Yeah.
really figuring out, like, in understanding that you can't do everything, right?
Mhm.
And I know we talk about balance a lot, but some days are going to be more about the kids and some days are going to be more about work, and understanding that that's okay, right? And then adding to that is the self-care piece, that we have to remind ourselves that we have to take care of ourselves first. We're better humans when we take some time for ourselves, whether it's watching a TV show by yourself or sitting and reading a book, going to get a massage, whatever your thing is to recharge your battery, that's so important to do. But I realize with my kids that, and I'm realistic with them, that there's just no way to do it all, right? You have to take some days are more difficult than others. And it's about not being so hard on yourself when those things happen. So, I mean, I have things are used to be pretty structured when they were little. With 6 kids, it was hard to get everything in the mix. And there were times where we'd be in the car driving to school and all of a sudden I realized, well, that one does not have shoes on. Great. Okay. Is there a Target nearby? Like, we all have these things that we go through, and in the moment they seem like the biggest obstacles. And you look
Sure.
back later and you're like, okay, that was ridiculous. Like, okay, give yourself some grace, ladies. Like, you can definitely get through all these different things. And yeah, there's days people will say to me, oh, I only have 2 kids. And I'm like, there's not an only there, right? It is 1 kid, 6 kids, whatever it is. They all have their unique ways of
Mhm.
working with you as a parent. And some days it just takes a lot more than others.
Yeah. For sure. It's great advice. Give yourself some grace. And I think it is important to realize that no matter the optics of other people, whether it's on social media or in
Mm,
real life, we all struggle with the same things, right? The one that forgot their shoes or their socks or their homework, right? We're all dealing with the same things.
yeah. And understanding that and also talking about it, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people feel like if you talk about what you struggle with, that makes you weak. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't make you weak. It makes you
Yeah.
human. And
Yeah.
what I've realized is the more I share my struggles, the more people are willing to share theirs. And it makes you feel better, right? Like you
For
feel like,
sure.
first of all, you're not alone, but also you can learn something from somebody else when they're saying, okay, let me tell you what happened to me today. That was a
Absolutely. Yeah.
woozy of a day.
Yeah. Yeah, being vulnerable, right? And being able to
Yeah.
talk about those things and open up and it creates connection between you and other people as well. And it can be very powerful. So totally, totally agree. Um, Simone, in this podcast, we talk a lot about success and redefining success. So I would love to know from your perspective, how do you define success today for yourself? And how has that definition evolved for you over time?
So I would say today that my definition of success is really, if I can, it's inspiring that one person. It's helping that one person change the way they see themselves and feel better about what they're going through in their lives. If I can help one person, then I feel very successful. I think in the past, I always thought of success was, oh, you have to be a CEO of this company or you have to have this much
Mhm.
money in your bank. But those aren't the things, for me at least, that satisfy me. My I was talking to my daughter, who I have the podcast with, Olivia, today. And I asked her, I said, what does success mean to you? And she's 21. So she said, right now, success means that I have enough money in my bank account that I can pay my bills, that I'm not going to be
Mhm.
late on my rent. And I thought that was a really unique perspective at 21, like that those are her thoughts at that age.
Sure.
And now that I'm beyond the stage of, okay, I have enough money to pay my bills, that how do I really want to be remembered, right? What do I really want to be known
Mhm.
for? Or how do I really want to feel about myself? And again, that's why success to me means that I'm able to inspire one other person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And really figuring out what it is that does fulfill you and satisfy you and lights you up, right? Because to go your whole life not figuring out what that is, pretty unfortunate and sad. And so we all have the power to do that. So I think that's an important takeaway there. And, having impact. What is the impact you're making on the world? And what you just said also too about legacy. What is the legacy you want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered for? And taking intentional steps to work towards that. So beautifully stated. What is one thing that you want our listeners to consider doing differently or changing after listening to today's episode?
I'd really love for them to try positive affirmations, whether they say them to themselves in the mirror in the morning or they write them down in a journal, because I truly believe it will change the way you see yourself. That having something to say to yourself every morning. I've had people say to me, "Oh, there's nothing I like about myself." I'm like, "Oh, that is not true. I'm going to tell you right away that's not true." Could be your eyelashes. It could be you got to somewhere. But I think it's so important that we use the tools that are available to us, and we can realize that they can totally transform so many parts of our lives by doing it. And so try positive affirmations. I will tell you, if you would have said that to me 10 years ago, I would have said, no way, that's too woo woo. That does not work.
Yep.
And I will tell you now that it absolutely works. You gotta do it. You gotta commit to it. You can't try it one time and say, oh, it didn't work for me. Okay. Did you go to the gym one time and you were totally fit after? No. Right. So, it's really important that you're consistent with anything we do in life. It's consistency is so important. So try it.
For sure. For sure. I know. And I had the same experience early on. I was very skeptical. And I am very rooted in neuroscience. And so once I understood the neuroscience behind it and how it actually can help change and rewire your brain, that's when I finally broke through. Oh, okay. Well, maybe there's something to this. Right. Mm-hmm. And then learning that other people have had positive experiences and understanding how it works really was a game changer for me. So I think that's great advice. And I love what you said earlier too about making sure it's personal to you, right? Mm-hmm. And making sure that it's meaningful to you and where you see yourself and where you want to be. So that's great advice. Yeah. Simone, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your insights and expertise. Where can our listeners learn more about you and the work that you do?
First, thank you so much for having me here. Another great conversation. I really enjoyed this time with you as well. You can find me on my website, SimoneKnego.com, SimoneKnego.com. And I'm actually revamping my website in the next 2 weeks, so it'll be a whole new ballgame. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You can find me there too, LinkedIn, but you can see everything that I'm doing on my website.
Perfect. And of course, you can visit my website at gialacqua.com. Reach out on Instagram at gialacqua. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. This is Gia signing off with gratitude for your time and energy. Our mic drops, but the movement continues. Until next time, your next chapter is waiting. Take care.
That concludes another empowering episode of Your Future Starts Now. Before we wrap up, I want to thank this incredible community of high-achieving women. Your energy, resilience, and commitment to growth are the driving force behind what we do. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate it, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower high-achieving women just like you. And of course, share Your Future Starts Now with the extraordinary women in your life who are also on a journey of healing and empowerment. Connect with us on social media, share your thoughts, let us know what topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. Stay connected on Instagram at gialacqua. I encourage you to carry the energy of this conversation into your day and keep on supporting the incredible women around you. Until next time, remember, your next chapter is waiting.